Hi, I'm Matt from hockeyreviews.ca, and this is the Bauer ACP Pro Girdle review. So I've worn this a bunch. I have loved some girdles in the past, specifically this 9K, just the mobility on it and how it feels so tight and close to you was fantastic. And this thing had amazing protection. This is not that at all. I always kind of looked at a bunch of girdles, specifically stuff like this, where it looks like it has no protection, and I kind of questioned it, specifically because when I took a look at girdles of the past, from the Jet Speed one I took a look at, as well as the Sherwood one, I never really noticed I gained a lot from those compared to my specific pants. The CCM UCLP are amazing. They're my benchmark, same with the HP 45. This thing felt totally different than those, but also had a ton of protection, whereas wearing those other girdles, they kind of felt similar in terms of how snug it was to you and how things moved around, but they totally lacked protection, and you didn't really get a ton of weight savings compared to the HP 45 and those UCLPs. These things right here are actually heavier than those two pair of pants I have, but these things are so protective, and the materials on here are just so ridiculous. That was something that was okay because of how the fit was and how popular these were in the past. This is the total opposite so I'm going to go over my usage with this, do a full overview of what is on here, a look at the fit profile, where the protective pieces are, and also going to compare them to the 9K a little bit, because I have had people asking kind of the differences between the 9K and this, and I mean, there's nothing similar basically besides that they're a girdle. Everyone always says I have too much protective equipment in terms of I want things to be too bulky and too protective. I don't really find HP 45s or UCLPs to be bulky. This thing is the exact opposite spectrum of everything. So obviously people are going to say I hate this. So before we jump into any of that, I've asked about pants and pro stocks. What about girdles? Have you gone to a girdle and then couldn't ever switch back to a pant? Or have you gone the other way around where you wore a girdle, had some bad experience, went back to a pant? Let me know in the comments. It's always interesting seeing people try on girdles, absolutely love it, and then like 4 months later you see them again in a pair of pants. So always interesting to see the different comments on that and to see why people end up making the switch one way or the other. So I'm going to get rid of the 9K for a little bit just to talk about the features on here and overall design, and once we get back into protection we'll go into the 9K to kind of compare the two. This girdle has been sort of used in the NHL for a while. It's been under a bunch of different lines now. I think there was a yellow ACP. I can't remember exactly. I haven't worn them. I haven't taken a look at the Bauer girdles. The 9K was always basically my benchmark and nothing really matched it. Eventually I saw this and I'm like, you know what? There's guys in the NHL wearing this right now. I'm just going to see what it is to see how much mobility I gain and if it's actually worth it, or if the 9K is the girdle that everyone should be wearing. So I ended up buying this myself to take a look at it, and I figured I would absolutely hate it. Jumping on to basis of this, the connection piece is a little strap like this. As you can see, very straightforward, has pulls and quick pulls on both sides, so you can just do it up and then pull it nice and tightly. And unlike the true one, I haven't lost this strap yet, and even when you pull it loose, because this end of it is really thick and it's sewn over itself, it doesn't pop out like it did on the true one. So I like that design a lot more. For the connection piece right here, it has just a Velcro tab like this. It almost feels like spandex, but obviously it doesn't stretch because it is that soft Velcro and then the hard Velcro, but everything else around it stretches, including like this piece a little bit and then all these connection points. So that is how the centerpiece connects. And I do really love this little tag right here. Bauer has been good for a while on little details like this that make it just feel nicer. This is a great little tag, it just has a logo, but it allows you to grab that without digging your hands in here to pull it off. So I really like that small attention to detail. When you open this up, you can see that belt is an internal belt. So while it starts on the outside here, it ends up going through this little padded piece right here, goes behind the back plate and the tailbone protection right here, and goes out the other side. Pretty standard piece on there. It is interesting how it doesn't have a cover here, but that does allow this piece to kind of flex and move around a bit more versus just having this little padded nylon piece on the sides. Looking also, since we're at the front piece, you can see there's absolutely no protection on this front piece, and there is no middle jock piece at all. It's just the leg separate attached by this and this belt, and that is it. My one complaint about this piece right here, because of just the Velcro piece, like the sticky side right here, I'm fat and I'm bigger. So this part, I always wear it, so it kind of always goes over here, but it's just annoying to get the initial connection point because you want it looser just so you can adjust the leg parts and then step in it. So this part is always kind of exposed. So I have to be very careful with that. This is a massive nitpick, but I kind of just wish there was like more here and this piece went further across so you could really wrap it more kind of like that without that Velcro touching your bare base layer and things like that. Massive nitpick, but that would just make it easier to wear and put on if this like extended. Obviously, you'd have issues with this piece coming through right here, but even if they could pull it kind of out here first, it would make that work. I've had people ask me over and over again of what socks I always recommend, and I've been using Cutshield for a while now. I have multiple stuff from them. So Cutshield is a company out of Canada that makes cut resistant socks, and these are their Pro Air 6, which means it's an anti-level 6 for cut resistance on here. Full review of it up there so you can check it out. But I now have a coupon code with Cutshield, so if you want to support the channel, you can check out the link in the description to Cutshield, buy some socks, which I think are honestly one of the better socks on the market. I absolutely love them. They're pretty thin and they are cut resistant and they're not too hot either. Use my coupon code, you get 25% off and it helps support the channel. Looking at the top piece for the protection on the ribs, I'm actually extremely surprised by this and I really like it. There is a little tiny, not very dense piece of foam right here that wraps upper piece, but then you do have this very dense, and I think this has a plastic insert. If it's not a plastic insert, it might be a curve insert because they use it here and here, but you can see how hard that is, and that is on your side rib. So awesome protection up there, and you do have that little tiny piece of foam on the side as well. So this is really solid and better than a lot of pants that I've seen recently. It does cover decently high up for what a girdle is as well. Going on the inside of this, you can actually kind of take it out, which is very interesting. So you can kind of fight behind this and pull this out, and you can see you have the molded foams. So this feels like there's a plastic inside this foam. It feels hard enough, like when you squeeze down on the sides like this, it feels like there's a plastic in here, and you can flex it a bit, but it flexes like a plastic kind of feels like it would. You can kind of see a shape in there. Like when you look on this side where there's just foam, you can see it flex easier. Then when you get there, it doesn't. So I think there is a plastic insert in here. Pretty interesting. I do like how it can pull out. Now that would be great for like pro teams to get replaceable parts. I haven't seen replaceable parts for that myself around, but I do like how that just slides in there. Pretty interesting there. You could also mod it yourself if you wanted to pretty easily. So going on to the back of this, you do have this little piece right here, which is I think either for a fight strap or might be for the girdle actual shell itself. I don't have one of those girdle shells. Someone please put in the comments what this is directly for if you've had it and used it. I can see this working for a fight strap. Just having that there, that fight strap dangling, attaching it with this sticky Velcro, and you might be good. But you can see the loops on the side here for that girdle piece, which would Velcro in here and attach in there. So this would also kind of work in that sense as well. For the padding back here, you do have a soft foam right here, but it is decently thick. You get basically that much of thickness behind it. I'm trying to kind of show that off. You can see it right here as well. And it is a pretty plush foam on there. Like that's still gonna hurt if you get cross-checked on it, but it's pretty thick. With a curved piece right here, which is also fantastic. I love this piece. It does get the bottom of your back and kind of cover it for that where you get those cross checks. Same with this side. So I really like all this protection parts on the side, and it is kind of more protective than you kind of expect for these parts, and surprising. It also fits very snug on your body there as well, which isn't surprising that it is a girdle, but it is surprising how well it fits and it doesn't get in the way at all. Going on the inner part right here, you can see has the sizing piece on there, the Thermocore Zero, which is the replacement for 37.5, which is supposed to have evaporating sweat on here. I didn't have an issue with these ever being too soaked, but they're girdle, they're super lightweight, and they breathe pretty well compared to pants. So that also very much helps for that. So padding on the tailbone itself has really soft plush foam right here, and it does feel like I can feel this section right here as a plastic insert behind it. And you can see some of the wear parts on here, which I'll talk about in a second, but that goes all the way through here and at the bottom tailbone. The bottom tailbone also does have a plastic in there, which is pretty nice. Now, here is one thing that I've noticed on this a lot. Because of this is all kind of really soft nylons and almost spandex, everything kind of flexes. Hopefully that's kind of showing off and feels like it moves a lot, but that also leads to a lot of tearing. So you can see along the stitching of this, a ton of tearing going on. I hope this holds up. I'm not sure if it will. I really hope it does. I don't have a ton of usage on this, so let me know in the comments if you do and if these are holding up. But you can see this kind of on a lot of things for this. A bit worrying, and on the back side, you can see that butt padding as well for that falls, and for I guess you got really hit from behind there. But you have a decently dense foam, a plastic insert between it, and then that thicker foam on the back side too. So you can see that going through there. And then you go to your kind of back of the leg, and you have this ventilated foam right here going all the way down all the way down the back of the leg. So padding back here is very minimal, but you can see that is kind of the thickness to it, but it does have the breathability on it, and it folds really easily. So you get a ton of movement out of that. And when we look on the other side of it, you can see it through, like, hopefully this comes off on camera, but you can see right through it, and that's the inside, which is that black material there. Now we continue on the side padding, and we have this awesome hip protector with the curve piece in there, and you do also see where that girdle attaches. Now this curve piece, you can kind of flex it a bit, but I love how this is exposed on here. It doesn't really need to be, and you can also take this out as well. You can take it out from the other side, but this is kind of what the foam package looks like. So you can see you have that foam back there and that curve, which acts as that plastic, basically exterior shell. So you have that hard impact protection and then the foam behind it for maximum protection in that sense. And what I mean, you can take it out. It's the same thing like the other little piece. You can open this up, pull this, if I can grab it, back, and you can really pull this out if you really want to, but that is to show how thick that foam piece is there, and then you have the curve in front of it. So this DCT has been advertised a bunch of places like Goalie. It's pretty generally thick where it is, and it is really soft to the touch. It is this black material right here. So here's a normal foam you have, and then you have this black material right here for that extra impact protection. And you can see, hopefully when I push this in, you can see how it is kind of that smart foam that gets really soft. This honestly feels very similar to Pour-On without being Pour-On. So while I am critical that they got rid of Pour-On, you can see the results of this do end up looking pretty good. And this does look more porous though than Pour-On, so maybe it is a bit lighter. I have to say that does feel pretty good. And if that is what is going into everything over Pour-On, pretty solid choice to be totally honest. And I really can't complain about that instead of Pour-On, because that is really good for padding on there. Continuing over here, you do have another foam piece between that hip and the bottom leg, which is right here. So it is trying to cover any of those gaps. No plastics or anything, super thin. You can see how easy it folds and moves, so not a lot of protection in that sense. And then we get on to the lower leg section, and when we look on the outside of this, you can see your adjustment piece. Again, a really nice piece on here, little piece of material to pull it off easier. Feels very nice, nice tab, so you don't have to grab in to the Velcro with your hands. And I'm gonna show off how that ends up working. So you have your two adjustments on the legs, +0, +1. I'm 6'3", so I believe they come stock in the +0, so it bunches up a little bit. Again, me being a bit taller, I stretch it out and put it up here to make it a +1, and then you get a bit extra leg length that way. So the difference on here is basically this, where this gets crunched up a little bit, and then when you take it off and you loosen it out, you can see you gain a little bit of length there. Now, one thing I do like is how it does have some reinforcements on these edges right here. I don't know how well this is going to hold up. Like I said, I have noticed some of the stitching almost pulling the materials apart because everything on here is so thin. Very breathable and feels like spandex, very thin spandex. Hopefully that holds up. I like how it does have like kind of that taped off design there though for that seam, so hopefully it doesn't rip apart. Going on to the leg part itself, we talked about the lack of padding through here, but lots of breathability and that interesting blue foam. You get onto the actual leg itself, and we undo this to take a look at it, and it is a pretty solid piece. So I don't know if this has curve in it. It definitely has a plastic in it. You can also kind of take this out as well, but you can't see a curve on the other side. So when you look at it, it's just a foam, but there is something sandwiched in between here. I'm not positive if it is curve or plastic, but it is pretty solid. You can flex it one way, but I can't really flex it that way. So whatever is in there is pretty solid. And when you rub your hands kind of all through it, I really can't feel like it exposed anywhere. So I don't think it is. So I wouldn't be able to tell. I have to pull the foams apart, which I'm not going to do. So interestingly though, there is this strap right here, which you can feel when you stick your hand in, like I'm doing right now. And that attaches basically to this part over here, and that attaches to this as well. So when you loosen this, that allows this strap to go lower and it pulls the whole thing up. So that is what is doing your leg adjustment there. So it's always kind of cool when you can stick your hand into the gear and actually feel it, and that is what you can feel on that one. Now, there is also a segment here, so you do have this hard plastic piece, and then you have this part over here, which also feels like it has a plastic insert. You can squeeze it. I can feel the corners. It's either plastic or curve. And that is for extra protection right here. And it does feel like it's a bit segmented because it can move a bit. You can see how it can kind of collapse. Feels really solid. So you get that leg wrap, then you get that little bit extra back leg wrap, or side leg wrap, I should say. Then you get the rest of the back here. This does cover a lot on the back. It's just not super thick and padded. When we go on to the side, you can see they have their anchor strap, so you can tighten or loosen the leg off. I've had issues with this a lot dealing with it. Basically, you have to really fiddle and find out which works for you so it doesn't get caught up, at least on my knee pads, especially the top knee pad flap gets caught up on this a lot. So I've had to kind of adjust how tight and loose it is. I think I wear it pretty overall loose to give my leg some movement on there, and so it doesn't get caught and this piece doesn't like kind of pull down into my knee strap part. But that's obviously going to be a size and personal thing where depending on your leg size, depending on your knee pads, how that works. This anchor strap has a bit of flex to it, but not a ton, and does have a really nice attachment piece here, but it doesn't have one of those nice tabs, but really it's not a big deal and you can pull it off pretty easy. But having those tabs on like pieces like this is nice, and then not having it here is weird because these I always adjust as well and take off, so it would have been nice to have that tab, but a total nitpick overall. We see their inner padding on the thigh. Well, this is like really on the inner leg. You can see it's just that blue foam like we saw on the back, not a lot going on there, and then that's about it. And that blue part goes all the way up to the inner thighs and inner leg right here, so not a ton of padding at all on the inner pieces. Very, very minimal. One thing I do actually don't like about these Bauer gear is because it's all Velcro like this, it ends up getting caught on things, so this ends up fraying and pilling. This is obviously a nitpick, and I've tried to be as careful as I can with this to make sure this never dangles and touches things, but even when I'm just taking them off my legs, stepping out of them, sometimes they get caught and they end up doing things like this. I don't think Bauer will ever really change this because this is a pretty breathable material as is. So if you made it a better nylon that won't get stuck on Velcro, it won't breathe as well. So can't see them changing that, and overall kind of a nitpick. The inner liner is pretty good for it though. It's not bad and it's pretty nice to the touch. And I kind of like this blue thing. It works well. It isn't super soft. I find the CCM stuff to be softer than this, but it's good enough and I've had zero complaints with it. Now, if you couldn't tell so far with this kind of overview and looking at everything, there's not a lot of protection here. The inner pieces are super thin. As you can see, even the connecting pieces between are super thin, but then they do have pretty solid protection on specific parts. Like this hip pad is really good. This piece is really good. And even this piece, if you get hit here, it's overall pretty good. Very minimal, but very specific places of protection. Not a lot. The crazy thing about this though, and why this thing is kind of awesome, besides the whole step-in part, which I'll talk about, is how stupidly light these are. I swear I have basically felt a shell that has weighed as much as, now that's exaggerating, but this thing is stupidly light, especially when you hold it up by like the top part here. The heavy parts are right down here, as you'd expect. That's the bulk of the plastic and the thickest padding. So when you hold it by like a leg, it kind of feels more heavy. But once you hold it by the top, the thing feels so light. Once you put this on your legs and actually put it on your body, it is so stupidly light. It feels like I'm naked compared to a bunch of other pants I have. This thing, I'm pretty sure I would need like 6 pairs of these to match the weight of one HP 45X, which is the X protection for HP 45s, which are just nuts anyways. But this thing is so ridiculously light. It is absolutely amazing. I have been someone who has constantly said that the HP 45s and UCLPs, you don't really gain anything because they're light enough as is when you wear a retail pant with less protection, or you wear a girdle like this, or the other jet speed girdles, which have less protection than those pants. They feel like they weigh pretty close, or it's at least negligible. This pant is not pretty close. This thing feels so stupidly light. It feels like you're not wearing anything, and it feels like I'm naked. And I've actually forgot a shell one time when wearing this, and I did look like I wasn't wearing anything. It looked like I was basically naked on ice with shoulder pads, a jersey, and then this tiny and very form-fitting and tight girdle. The mobility on these things is also absolutely stupidly good. Once again, when I talk about those other girdles, I feel like you don't really gain any mobility compared to HP 45s and UCLPs, but this thing's mobility is just off the charts, and you can kind of see it everywhere. All these pieces just move and fold in on itself. This sits right on your hip, which can never really move. This sits right in your thigh, which really can't flex. And then these never get in the way of each other when moving with your body. It's just perfect for it. Everything on the side, even though this is pretty solid protection, never feels like it gets in the way. It's so snug that it just sits there. And then this stuff just like it never hits itself. It's so fantastic for mobility. I am so pleasantly surprised by it and blown away by it. And I'm kind of amazed that I haven't had that experience with other girdles before. And even just wearing this compared to those other girdles, it's just like night and day difference. I would love to try the Warrior girdle because I haven't tried that one on to see if it's any good. But this thing is just nuts and a whole different level. One thing we do have to do though is compare it to that 9K which people talk about all the time, or at least ask me about all the time, because I think this is the best girdle there was in terms of protection. Obviously, these are two very, very different girdles. And when we look at that, you can see based on these legs and how beefy this leg is. This back part of the leg, so you have the front, you have the back, is basically the size as the front part of the leg on the new Bauer ACP Pro. And then on the inside of the CCM, you have this protection piece here, which plastic inserts and foam on it, and where you have this super thin, look how I can fold this with my hand. You can't really do that. These are all segmented to try to move the best possible. You can't fold these at all. They're thick, they're huge. You look at that thigh piece, look at the size difference between these two. This thing is just absolutely massive. It's thick and it is massively plastic and protective. This thing is half the size. This does have solid protection for what it is, but you can obviously see the difference in overall protection. Look at the back pieces. This doesn't move. It's so thick, it won't flex. This thing just flexes all over the place. Again, this thing is basically a very, very protective pant in girdle form. Look at the padding above here, where there's just absolutely nothing on the Bauer. They're totally two different beasts in this sense, and I find it hard, like the comparison between these two basically shouldn't exist, because to me these are a direct, like, super protective pant, and this is not trying to be that whatsoever. So this one you have to step into. It doesn't have a piece that disconnects at the bottom, as you can see. You have to step into it like a normal pant, and then these are loose, where this thing, you just literally wrap it around yourself and it just kind of comes around like a towel and it's on. So the differences between these two are massive. I love the 9K in terms of it's great for protection. Mobility feels great because all this moves really well with itself, but it's heavy. This thing, mobility is stupidly good. You can see it, just has nothing here, and it's ridiculously light. So it's just a totally different beast whatsoever. And you have to figure out which you kind of want and prefer. And you want to support the channel, and you need a base layer and a protective, kind of supportive base layer that helps protect your growing as well as your hips. Check out the Cortec. This is the Pro 1.0 pant, so this one is not quite as restrictive, and this is kind of tight right here in this X pattern. You might have seen these as Under Armour before, or Bauer for the hockey specific ones. There's also the Core 3.0, which is a lot stiffer, as you can see. Really helps protect my growing and keeping it kind of in place and make sure it doesn't overstretch itself. There's a discount code, and you click the link in the description. Use that discount code to get a discount off, help support myself, as well as get you some pretty awesome base layer pants that really do help with injury prevention and help stabilize your core while playing. One of my favorite things about this girdle is how it opens up like this and you can just step in it. So a lot of people end up doing their socks and their shin pads and their skates first before their pants, and then they step in their pants. Well, you can do that with these, and then you just simply end up doing this. Get this jersey out of the way. And you do the legs up, and your girdle is good to go, and everything is there. This is like such a nice and kind of easy way to get stuff on, and I know there's a ton of people that use that process, and this makes it great for that. Now, while you're sitting here, you can see where the lack of protection is, and when we look at other pants I reviewed recently, like those True ones, you actually get kind of more on here than you would the True. This is all padded. It's not a lot of padding. It's not as good as the Pro Stock pant padding, but it's at least padded, where the True, it's nothing there. And then you do have your main pieces here, as well as going onto the side, and this big curved cap, which is here as well. And then even pretty, like, this is just soft foams, but it still foams on your butt, and you have that middle piece, which is pretty dense foams. It's not as good as those Pro Stock pants, but it is okay. And then the back wrap, like, you do have a lot of foams in here, and this is a pretty dense foam going through as well. So there is a decent amount of coverage on this, even though that's super thin, and the mobility is absolutely ridiculous. Now, one thing I notice a lot on is I would get this piece kind of caught up into this top piece on my shin pad, so I kind of had to adjust how tight I kept this. I found when it was really tight, it was a bigger issue. I wore it pretty loose, and it was a lot better, and it moved a lot better. But mobility in this thing is, there's nothing as good as this. It is so ridiculously good. It feels like you're not wearing a protective pant. When I put shells on this, I feel naked, but you still have a decent amount of protection in there. But you lose all that bulk. I'm pretty amazed by these. They're nowhere near the 9K in terms of protection. You know that, you're sacrificing that, but the mobility is so good compared to everything else. They are just absolutely ridiculous. And people will always ask, what do they wear, or what do people wear with them? This is just a pant shell I have, and I've worn this a lot. This is just an XL pant shell. These are XLs. I wear XL pants. I wear these with the
girdle, and they are slightly big, so you can see how they fit so loose, but you have no restriction. And if I tighten these up so they don't fall down, it works pretty well, and it's really easy to just wear a pant shell on here. Like you can see, they are looser. If you want to go to a girdle shell to be tighter, you can, but this has always worked pretty good for me with these, and I just wore pant shells. Yeah, if you want them tighter and more snug and form-fitting, you can go to a different, like probably a large pant shell. If you're in an XL, so probably size down, or just get the girdle shells, but this works totally fine for me, and I'm fine with this being a bit looser if it means I still have a ton of mobility, which I do. So these are absolutely ridiculous for that, and basically, like, I don't know of a pant that comes close to how good the mobility is on these compared to these girdles. So that's about it for this absolutely ridiculous Bauer ACP Pro girdle. This is not my type of gear I generally use and generally want to wear. I like pants, especially a bunch of pro stock pants, fit very well for me, very protective, especially compared to something like this. And I don't really have mobility issues in it, but I can't lie. When I put this thing on, I feel like I can move faster. I feel like I get less tired, even though those other pants don't feel bulky and don't feel like they're weighing me down. When you put stuff on like this, it's just like, oh, I can move so much. And it is absolutely ridiculous for it. While it's not my type of general piece of gear, I generally go for more protection, especially because I get shots up here and everything. This is more protective with this piece than those True pants I recently looked at, which didn't have anything right here. It's weird. There is a ton of lacking protection on here. I would not want to get in the way of blocking shots for this. I wouldn't really want to take a ton of hard hits on the hips compared to something like this 9K, which is way bigger, compared to a UCLP, which has a bigger piece of padding on there. Still, this is targeted protection and it works pretty well. The mobility on it and the lightweight is just so ridiculous. It's insane. Now, can I recommend it? Yes and no. Again, depends what you're looking for. If you want to protect the pant, this isn't it. If you want the lightest pant possible that fits ridiculously tight and it looks like you're wearing skinny jeans all the time, but you can move really well and you look like William Nylander skating out there, this is definitely the pant for you and the girdle for you, and you should definitely take a look at them. I can't believe how much I like wearing this thing, and I've a few times, especially since I've had my knee injury where I haven't been able to play as much as I want to, get back up to speed, and I've gone to this because I just feel like I can last longer on the ice because of how light it is and how much little effort I have to wear it. Wearing and skating with this thing, your strides just feel completely free, and it's something I never noticed or had an issue with pants before, but once you take everything off, this thing just frees you up so much more, and it's something I never noticed with my Jet Speed girdle before when I tried to wear it, and I've never noticed it wearing like the Sherwood one just around the house. This thing I noticed immediately, got on the ice, and it's ridiculous. And it's totally opposite of what I normally like, but it's really good. I do wish there was a few changes in terms of just, even then, all my changes are total nitpicks, so it's not even worth going over really. These are fantastic, and Bauer has a very, very good product here that I can easily recommend if people are looking for the actual girdle that's super lightweight and super mobile. This is it. Now, I hope to try out a few in the future. True is making a new one, I believe, from Tackla stuff. I checked out the Tackla pant. I have a full review of it. Check that out. I also want to try out the Warrior girdle, but this thing, I have a hard time believing there's really going to be something that's really going to beat this in terms of weight and mobility. It is just stupid for that. People are going to ask me what shell to wear for this. I can't answer that. I just wear my player shells. I don't care if they're a little loose on here or a little long. I don't really have an issue. Some people say you can go down a size in player shell. So if this is an XL girdle, you can wear a large player shell. I haven't tried it. I just wear my XLs. I don't have a problem with it, but that is going to be something you have to find out. Maybe people in the comments can help out with that. Post them below so if people have questions for that, and they can get information in regards to that, because I don't have the answer for that, because I didn't buy the actual girdle shell for these. I didn't think it was worth the money on spending on it when I have a ton of shells, so I didn't go that route. Thank you very much for watching this video. If this video was helpful and it made you make a purchase because of my video, please reach out to the company like Bauer on social media. Let them know Hockey Review's review of their equipment was helpful and helped you make a purchase. While I like to review all the gear I could possibly get my hands on, it is expensive because I have to buy most of it, like this girdle here. Letting companies know I'm helpful helps me get on the radar, so hopefully I can review more of this gear in the future. So thank you very much for watching this video. Remember to subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links are in the description. If you want to support the channel and you're buying hockey equipment anyways and you live in Canada or US, check the links if you're in Canada to Hockey Supremacy. If you're in the US, to Pure Hockey. Clicking those links, making a purchase gives me a kickback so I can keep making more videos and reviews like this one and buy more gear. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without buying anything hockey specifically, check out the links in the description to buy me a coffee and Patreon. Everything through any of those links always comes back into the channel so I can keep making more content and doing more videos. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.